Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over 10 college football games for Week 4 scheduled for Saturday, September 23rd, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your football picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Saturday in college football. First up, we see Oklahoma taking on Cincinnati. This one's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern start time. It's going to be on Fox. And we see Oklahoma more than 2-touchdown favorite in this game. I think this is the toughest matchup for Oklahoma yet this season. I mean, you open the year against Arkansas State. Could be a bottom 5 FBS team this year. And you beat them, you earn the blowout win and cover, but still not the most impressive matchup there. Then you play SMU and Tulsa, two rebuilding programs. SMU, of course, losing their quarterback and Mordecai to the transfer portal. Rashee Rice to the NFL, their leading receiver. He is now a member of the Chiefs. So it's a nice win, but it would have been better if it was last year, I would say, for SMU's team. And then you beat Tulsa, another team that lost quite a bit of production from last year's roster, and a team who's also dealing with some injuries early this season. So now Oklahoma goes on the road against Cincinnati. A team is coming off an upset loss. We took Miami, Ohio, plus the points last week on the rundown. But I think Cincinnati's a lot more attractive as a home underdog rather than the big, two-touchdown favorite they were last week. Cincinnati's offense is moving the ball well, especially on the ground. Oklahoma's run defense had issues last year, and I think Cincinnati will be able to move the chains on the ground in this game. Emory Jones is not my favorite quarterback option for Cincinnati. I mentioned that last week, but I think he'll be good enough in this game. And Oklahoma last year was also very beatable on the road. They gave up 9 more points per game defensively on the road than at home. They also scored 9 fewer points per game on the road. So I think this is just too many points to give Cincinnati, team coming off a tough loss. I think they bounce back here, at least cover the spread, maybe pull off the outright upset, but give me the points here with Cincinnati. Next up, we see Virginia Tech taking on Marshall. This one's going to be 12 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. This is a really tough spot here for the Hokies, in my opinion, as Virginia Tech was in a similar spot last year when they played at Old Dominion. Teams like Old Dominion and Marshall don't always get to host ACC or Power 5 opponents, and we saw Old Dominion earn the outright upset last year against Virginia Tech, and the offense for the Hokies is just in really bad shape. I mean, we saw them score 16 and 17 points the last 2 weeks. The quarterback play is questionable, due to injuries, but also just play in general. I mean, Grant Wells, even if he plays in this game, he's only had a 53.2% completion on the year, and the offensive line is not held up. And we know Marshall's defense very aggressive. They put a lot of pressure on the opposing QB. Last year, they were one of the sack leaders in college football, and so far this year, looking pretty sharp there as well. I think Virginia Tech really struggles to move the ball, move the chains in this ball game. I think Marshall's offense good enough here to win this game by at least a touchdown. This is going to be a huge, program boosting game for Marshall if they can grab the W. They're off a bye week, so they've had a lot of time to prepare for this matchup. Give me Marshall laying the points at home. Next up, Western Michigan and Toledo. This one, 1:30 Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, in my opinion, this is a matchup between the best team on paper in the MAC going into conference play in Toledo and the weakest team on paper in Western Michigan, potentially the weakest team in FBS football in Western Michigan, honestly. But Western Michigan, give them credit for scheduling those 2 really tough games at Syracuse and Iowa. But those games are going to prepare you for conference matchups like this one. But I didn't really like what I saw in either of those games. I mean, we know Western Michigan failed to cover in both games, and the defense struggled, giving up 40-plus points. Giving up 40-plus points to Iowa is not an easy thing to do. And the Western Michigan defense has been really undisciplined lately. 8-plus penalties for the team in the last 2 games, and a lot of those were 15-yard penalties. You're roughing the passers, your pass interferences, so not what you want to see for going into conference action against a very good Toledo offense. Good quarterback play in Finn, very good run game. It's averaging already 5 yards per carry, and one of the best offensive lines in the conference, giving up only 2 sacks so far this year with 90-plus passing attempts. The defense for Toledo is also very, very strong. Good against the run. They're aggressive. They get pressure on the quarterback, and Western Michigan's quarterback play has not been great this year. Western Michigan has relied a lot on the bomb play, the big 50-yard plays. We saw it against Syracuse, the first play of the game, basically, a 75-yard touchdown. Against Iowa, we saw a few of those. But when it comes to moving the chains and moving the ball consistently, I don't think the Broncos offense can do that in this game, especially on the road. This is a revenge game for Toledo, who lost to Western Michigan last year. To me, it's a brutal spot for WMU. Give me Toledo laying the big number at home. Next up, we see Georgia Southern taking on Ball State. This one's going to be at 2 o'clock Eastern start time. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, I like what I saw from Georgia Southern last week against Wisconsin. They failed to cover that game, and I was actually on Wisconsin in the premium area. But, Davis Brin is a quarterback that has always been able to move the ball, and he's, I think, a really talented pocket passer. he put up really good passing numbers in terms of the yards gained in that game for Georgia Southern's passing offense. But the big problem with Bryn throughout his collegiate career when he was a member of Tulsa and so far here at Georgia Southern, when you put pressure on Bryn, he makes a ton of mistakes. And that's why I thought Wisconsin's defense had the upper hand in that game, because we know Wisconsin could put a ton of pressure, especially on mid-major offensive lines. And they were able to get there. They had 6 sacks on Bryn, but they also forced 5 interceptions and a fumble in that game. So, Ball State has played 2 really tough teams in terms of their offensive lines in Kentucky and Georgia, UGA, to start the year. So that's really going to help them prepare for a game like this. And Ball State last year, at the beginning of the season, they really were not able to put a lot of pressure on opposing QBs. They only had 2 sacks in the first 4 weeks combined. However, as the season went along, they were getting a lot more pressure, especially in MAC play. I would say Georgia Southern, similar to a MAC-style offense. I think Bryn's going to be under pressure in this game, and I think the offensive line not going to hold up for him. Ball State should be able to force some mistakes in this game, be in the plus in the turnover differential, and that should be enough for a home cover, in my opinion. Ball State's offense was a question mark going into the season. They played really, 2 really tough defenses, like I said, in Kentucky and Georgia, and they were able to get over 200 yards against Georgia, which may not seem like, a crazy number, but we know Georgia is one of the best defenses year after year in college football. Ball State last week, they faced their first weak opponent. It was Indiana State. They put up 45 points, over 400 yards, and ran for almost 7 yards per carry. Give me the points here with the home team in Ball State. I think they cover this number. Next up, we see UCLA taking on Utah. This one's going to be 3:30 Eastern. It's going to be on Fox. Great Pac-12 rivalry between 2 teams in the AP Top 25 polls. Now, I think UCLA is flying under the radar right now. We know that it was seen as a rebuilding year for the program going into the season, because you lose Dorian Thompson-Robinson, your long-term quarterback, and obviously Charbonnet at running back. But to me, this UCLA team's playing fine on both sides of the ball, especially defensively, where I think they've made a lot of improvements there. And Utah on the other side, if you've watched the college football shows with Mitch and Chris Ruffalo and myself, you've heard what I've said about Utah. I don't like to use the word fraudulent, but I do think that Utah is a little bit overvalued and a little bit overrated. We saw week 1 against Florida. They won that game by 13 points to cover the spread in the end. That was with the backup quarterback in there. So, it was still a very nice win for Utah, but I think Florida really hurt themselves in that game. I think it was Florida losing that game more than Utah winning it. Florida had a ton of pre-snap penalties. They had, at one point, 2 guys with the same number on the field, and it was a 4th down situation. It gave Utah an automatic first down. They ended up scoring on that drive, and Florida outgained Utah in the end, 346 to 270 in that game. Then Utah went on the road against Baylor, who was also playing a backup quarterback in that ball game. Utah stumbled in that game. They failed to cover, and they barely won that game. Honestly, it looked like they were going to lose that one outright. And then last week against Weber State, Utah wins that game. They don't cover the spread by a couple of points, and I didn't think it was the greatest performance from Utah either, only up 17-7 at halftime. To me, UCLA is flying under the radar. I think we're getting a better team getting points here on the road. I know it's a tough place to play in Utah, but I'm going to take those points with the Bruins. Next up, we see Florida Atlantic, FAU, taking on Illinois. This one's going to be 3:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network. Now, we talked about FAU on the rundown last week, and we took Clemson and laid the points, and we talked about how FAU has struggled, at least recently, in their program in these step-up games, playing some of the Power 5 or just tougher teams on their schedule, and they lost that game to Clemson 48-14, against UCF last year 40-14, years prior to Florida, Ohio State, UCF again. I know Illinois might not be as good as some of those programs, but Illinois is still a Big Ten Power 5 team. This is a must-win game if you're Illinois, if you want to make a bowl game this year. And I think Illinois actually played pretty well against Penn State last week. It was a game where they were only outgained by less than 29 yards, and the first down battle was 20-20, so even there. Illinois, the offense hasn't been the sharpest at all times this year, but I still think there's a solid passing game. I think Altmaier's a decent quarterback option for the Illini going forward. And the run game, I think, gets going here against FAU, who gave up 5 yards per carry last week at Clemson. Second straight road game for FAU, not an easy spot to be in. Illinois stays at home after their game against Penn State. To me, it's an Illinois win by 3 touchdowns plus. I think the defense is really strong here. I think the offense does enough to win it. Give me Illinois laying the points. Next up, we see Boston College taking on Louisville. This one's also going to be a 3:30 Eastern start time. It's going to be on the ACC network. Now, Boston College, we took them in the premium area against Florida State plus the points last week, but I don't think Boston College is as effective on the road as they are at home. It was a nice home field advantage in that one. Florida State had some issues in that game. They found the win in the end, but Boston College certainly had their chances to win that, earn that outright upset. But now on the road at Louisville, I just don't think it's going to be a great matchup here. Louisville actually was dominating Indiana its last game in the first half. It was 21-0 at halftime, and they had a 302-107 yard advantage in that first half. Louisville took its foot off the pedal in the second half of that game. They let Indiana cover the spread in the end. It was a 21-14 final, but I think Louisville is really flying under the radar in the ACC right now. Strong defense, especially against the run. The secondary has actually been pretty solid as well. There were question marks there going into the season. They're running the ball very well offensively, Louisville is. Over 250 rushing yards per game and over 6.5 yards per carry. The offensive line's been sharp. In the passing game, while there were obviously going to be question marks there going into the year after losing Malik Cunningham, it's actually been pretty decent. So I think Louisville scores plenty of points in this game. I don't think Boston College is going to do too much offensively, even though I do like Castellanos at quarterback. I just don't think he's going to be effective here on the road. Give me Louisville laying the points. Next up, we see Eastern Michigan taking on Jacksonville State. This one's going to be an afternoon game at 5 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN+. Now, Eastern Michigan, to me, when I see this team on the road as an underdog, I almost blindly take them. I mean, this team has been 25-6 against the spread as a road underdog in the last 8 seasons, including a win this year at Minnesota as, I think, a 21-point dog. They lost that game only by 19 points. So, Eastern Michigan here on the road as a dog, small dog against Jacksonville State. I think Jacksonville State's been one of the more fortunate, or you could say lucky teams in college football this season. They're +7 right now in the turnover differential, which is not really something you can expect, for the rest of the season, especially playing a team like Eastern Michigan, who has been +4 in the turnover battle in the last 2 games itself. Eastern Michigan won a nice game against UMass. They didn't cover the spread in that game, but UMass, I think, is well improved. So I think it's a solid win for the Eagles there. A solid offense, a decent offensive line. It's improving. The defensive line gets some pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, and I do think Eastern Michigan keeps themselves in this game, if not earn the outright upset. So give me Eastern Michigan plus the points. It's just a system play with how well this team has been as a road underdog. Next up, we see Sam Houston taking on Houston, the Cougars. This one's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. It's going to be on the Big 12 Network or ESPN+. Now, to me, in college football especially, low total road underdogs are pretty attractive, especially when they're getting double digits like we see with Sam Houston in this one. We know the Sam Houston offense is not in a good place right now, but they had a bye week, and that's, I think, really crucial for this team offensively. They got shut out at BYU. They only scored 3 points against Air Force. So they have that bye week to get things going offensively, but the defense is already in great shape here for Sam Houston. They gave up less than 300 yards in both of their games. They only gave up 14 points to BYU. That's a BYU team that just went into Arkansas and put up 38 points in an outright win against the Razorbacks. So really strong defense for Sam Houston. Good against the run, even better against the pass. I think they're going to actually have some. I think they're going to have some big plays here against Houston on the defensive end. Houston last week against TCU, 36 points given up, over 500 total yards. The week prior against Rice, over 450 yards and 43 points. Now, granted, that game went to overtime, so of course we're going to see more high-scoring games. But still, I don't think this Houston defense is in a great place. I think this is the best matchup that Sam Houston's had offensively this year. I think we see him move the ball a bit, a little bit more than what we've seen. I think defense is as strong as ever. In a low total game, those points are even more valuable. Give me the points here with Sam Houston on the road. And the final game for Saturday's card in college football that we're going to go over, it's going to be a big-time rivalry, big-time matchup in the top 10 AP polls. We got Ohio State and Notre Dame, 7:30 Eastern. This one's going to be on NBC. This is also a rematch from last year's matchup, and Notre Dame is revenge-minded, and I like revenge-minded home underdogs, especially when they have a home field advantage like the South Bend Irish fans do. I think that Notre Dame has been as impressive as any college football team this season. I mean, they're 4-0, and yeah, you could say the strength of schedule is a little bit suspect. They played Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan. A nice win against NC State. That was on the road. That was a blowout win and cover 45-24. I like the fact that Sam Hartman's an experienced quarterback and Kyle McCord is not. I mean, he's playing on the road here. It's going to be a tough environment, like I said. Sam Hartman's been as good a quarterback as any quarterback in college football. It's 71% completion, over 1,000 passing yards so far, 13-0 touchdown interception ratio. To me, Notre Dame's playing great on both sides of the ball. Special teams has been there. They're forcing turnovers. I don't really understand why they're the dog in this game. I think that they deserve to be the favorites in this one. Give me Notre Dame plus the points in South Bend. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 4 in college football. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your college football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.